It's episode 2 of WrestleReview. Episode 2 of WrestleReview. Episode 2 of WrestleReview. It's episode 2 of WrestleReview. Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 2 of the WrestleReview podcast series. If this is the first time you're joining me, welcome to an exciting new podcast series looking chronologically at classic WWE/F pay-per-view events. So far, you've missed the pilot episode and episode 1, which looked back at the inaugural WrestleMania. But fear not, these are available on both the YouTube and the SoundCloud account. Wherever you're listening from, please like, repost, or share if you're enjoying the content you're hearing, and you can send feedback and comments to WrestleReviewFans@gmail.com. So, this week's intro and outro music is Behold the Sun by Topher Moore and Alex Elena. With its spacey intro and electronic vibe, it's perfect for the coverage of this far too hyped pay-per-view event entitled The Wrestling Classic. A 16-man tournament which decides absolutely nothing, which decides just nothing, but is grand and innovative in its vision. Before we get into the event, I'd like to thank a few people for their retweets and support so far. Thanks to the Mapmen podcast for favoriting my tweet to them, and IAIB podcasters, I hope I got that right, for giving me encouragement and positive feedback. Also, amazingly, I received a retweet and reply from Jay Hunter of the OSW review, who was delighted that I'd done a Black Saturday pilot. I cannot thank you enough, Jay. Your work's been really inspirational to me in doing this podcast. This tweet was also favorited by Twitter user Cardboard Clippings, so thanks to you. And thanks to others who have followed me on Twitter. It's @thepackham, by the way, if you didn't know. Such as WrestleRap, What the Tech, PWI Informant, GFQ Podcast Network, and not only did IAIB podcasters and Mapmen podcasts interact with me, they also followed me, which was amazing. So thank you to everyone for your support, and let's get into the nitty-gritty of the Wrestling Classic. So, as per usual, first of all, we're going to go through some background of the event. So, the Wrestling Classic was WWF's first experimental foray into an exclusively pay-per-view event after WrestleMania, which was actually mostly available through closed-circuit television, although I think it was available on pay-per-view in some territories, but I'm not sure. Vince showed his classic streak of competitiveness by placing the Wrestling Classic 3 weeks before Starrcade 1985. Coming into the pay-per-view, the champions were Hulk Hogan was the WWF champion, Wendy Richter was the ladies champion, Tito Santana was the Intercontinental champion, and Greg Valentine and Bruce Beefcake were tag team champions. But only Hogan would defend his title at the tournament due to the obscene number of matches on the card. This totals, I think it's 15 by the end of the tournament. My goodness, you're going to be very bored of this podcast by the end, aren't you? This was also the only WWF pay-per-view event with no tag team match until Royal Rumble 2005. That's quite an impressive honour. The tag team champions, the Dream Team, Valentine and Beefcake, were not at the event, and the British Bulldogs, the Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy Smith, competed separately, along with the foreign connection of Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. In terms of the WWF title match between Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper at the pay-per-view, as I've already mentioned in episode 1, Piper's outspoken hatred of the Rock and Wrestling Connection really riled Hulk Hogan, and they had a match for the WWF title at the MTV event, The War to Settle the Score, which Hogan won by DQ. Like a number of things at the event, it didn't settle any scores, because then the main event of Mania, as I discussed in episode 1, was of course Hogan and Mr. T versus Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff with Bob Orton, which Hogan and T also won. Hogan continued to feud with Piper for the rest of the year, often winning by DQ, and it's worth remembering that for this event as well. So really, their war to settle the score didn't really settle anything, leading to this Wrestling Classic title match. So let's get into the event itself, the first and only Wrestling Classic tournament. So we open up with an opening sequence in space, another classic WWF 80s introduction, which makes pains to make us oh so aware that this is a WWF event. The original music for this was Back to the Future and Huey Lewis and the News classic Back in Time. Howard Finkel then welcomes us to the WrestleReview Wrestling Classic from the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, Illinois, before running down the tournament participants along with telling us someone will win a Silver Cloud 3 Rolls Royce. And then there's also the WWF title match between Hogan and Piper. On to the introductions from Vince McMahon, Alfred Hayes, and Susan Waitkiss. Vince reiterates much of what Finkel has said in his introduction, and then Vince and Lord Awkward Hayes, he's back, don't worry about it, discuss the conditioning required to win the tournament. Hayes describes the tournament as the ultimate test, a decathlon, a marathon, and a triathlon rolled into one ultra-exhaustive competition. Yeah, right. And then we get a rundown of the tournament with Susan using her phallic stick to show us the members. And then Vince takes us over to Mean Gene performing the draw. So Mean Gene, along with his nondescript drawers, perform the supposed random drawing. Ricky Steamboat is up first, and he draws Davey Boy Smith, describing him as a fine young man, to reiterate the point that this is a face-to-face match. Face-v-face match, I should say. Elizabeth draws for Savage, who hilariously tells her to do the thing, Elizabeth. Despite encouraging Elizabeth to do the draw for him, he is annoyed by the even Putski drawing and tells Elizabeth to get out. Mr. Fuji draws for Don Morello, who it turns out will face Tito Santana, and Mr. Fuji tells Santana that he's in big trouble. And then Vince introduces us to an interview with Jack Tunney, the superficial and uninspiring on-screen president of the World Wrestling Federation. So Mean Gene talks to Jack Tunney, and apparently he's come all the way from Canada to attend the event, and it shows. He looks absolutely knackered, he spouts cliches, and shows absolutely no charisma. Tunney discusses the rules of the tournament, where both parties will be eliminated if there's a double countout or a time limit draw. And back to Vince once again, who praises Tunney for, well, obviously just for promotion rather than actually praising him because it was a terrible promo. And he sends us to our favourite announcing team, Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. Ventura says he's here to call it like it is, as he does in every pay-per-view he announces, and Monsoon reiterates his equally monotonous and generic chatter about this being a real happening. And a shout out to Ventura's awesome sparkling shirt in the opening section that I guess he keeps on throughout the show. I didn't really notice any further. And yes, finally we've reached match 1, which is in the round of 16, Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart against Corporal Kirshner. Kirshner comes out to patriotic band music. He's a corporal who is the pride of the 82nd Airborne. He had a short run in the WWF before being suspended for a positive drug test in 1987 and refusing to return to the company. He went on to wrestle in Japan as Leatherface. Adonis, or Adonis, if you heard the Black Saturday podcast, is still in his hard New York gimmick, the hard man New York thing, before his run as the Adorable One. And the commentators also mention how Adonis and Ventura were part of the East-West connection in the past. Some early observations, the ring mat is so springy, it's ridiculous that it's basically a trampoline, and Hart's megaphone is way too loud in this match, and it sometimes drowns out the commentary team, which isn't a good thing, of course. The match starts off with some pushing in the corner early on, before Kirshner performs an arm drag. He does a headlock, which goes on forever, allowing the commentators to promote the tournament, and they say that the winner will write his own ticket, but he won't receive any trophies or anything, or in fact, not really that much recognition. Adonis eventually gets out of this headlock, performs a back suplex, a couple of elbows, and then applies a headlock himself. Kirshner gets out of this and gets a few shots at Adonis in the corner. He tries for a suplex, but this is reversed by Adonis, who hits a pretty sweet DDT on Kirshner, who lands on his ear to prevent a full head bump, I guess, and Adonis picks up the win. There's a bad gag made about Kirshner being happier to jump out of an aeroplane with the airborne than being in the ring. This is a really nice ending, but the rest of the match is way too short and ultimately a headlock fest. For this match, I've awarded only 2 stars out of 5. It's a theme which may continue, that's all I'm saying. Mean Gene is backstage now with Adonis and Jimmy Hart. Adonis exits pretty sharply to get backstage despite his rather large physique, and is interviewed by Mean Gene. Hart says some incoherent things and then characteristically says, "Woo, baby!" And Adonis says he wrote the wrestling book and that the other competitors don't know a wrist lock from a padlock. But despite writing this book, which obviously doesn't exist, he says that he's rewriting wrestling again. My goodness, a second edition. Thank you very much, Adonis. I feel as though some kind of scholarly gimmick was missed here for Adrian Adonis, rather than having his terrible, adorable gimmick. Mean Gene really struggles here to get a word in during Adonis's mad, but actually fairly competent promo. And we move on to match 2, which pits the Dynamite Kid, woo Britain, against Nikolai Volkov, boo Soviet Union. Volkov does his usual Soviet national anthem routine, and during this segment, several people go to relieve themselves or get a drink during this, but little do they know how short the match is going to be. Dynamite whispers something sneakily in the ref's ear as Volkov mouths off. The ring bell goes early, and Dynamite hits a perfect top rope dropkick for the victory. This really is an awesome dropkick. Before leaving hilariously quickly after a somersault celebration to escape Volkov's wrath, as Ventura laments that Volkov didn't even get a chance to take his jersey off. The official time of the fall is given as 9 seconds, so that King Kong Bundy's victory over SD Jones at Mania isn't defeated. However, of course, the Bundy match is actually 23 seconds long in reality. And this match is actually, well, I counted it close to the 8-second mark, although I've seen some people quote it as 6. A great dropkick, but a nauseatingly short match. This gets 1 out of 5 stars from me. Backstage again with Mean Gene, who interviews Randy Savage. Savage describes the wrestling classic as the most important thing, and he's ready and nervous for it. Elizabeth. Elizabeth actually speaks for once, which is strange, and tries to say exciting about 900 times, but just ends up sounding less than excited. Savage says that he fears wasting energy by doing the interview, but he says he has so much to burn that it doesn't matter. He self-describes himself as the #1 wrestler in the world. Mean Gene warns Savage about Putski's strength, but Savage talks up his athleticism, and that leads us into Ivan Putski against Randy Savage with Elizabeth. Ivan Putski gets a big pop for being Polish. He gets a big pop for being Polish or a foreigner. This is clearly someone who's built up big crowd respect in the industry, despite coming from another land. And he's not actually the heel in this match, which is quite surprising for a foreign wrestler in the 80s. He's the son of failed wrestler... he's the father of failed wrestler Scott Putski, who once wrestled at the Ground Zero In Your House pay-per-view. He looks in great condition, does Putski. Savage enters, and Jesse says that Elizabeth is where she should be, behind Savage, and then a discussion of management etiquette ensues. So Ventura talks about tutoring Randy Savage, and Monsoon can't deny Ventura's ability as both a tutor and a wrestler. Ventura insults Putski by calling him Paduski, and Savage tries a cheap shot at the beginning of the match, runs away afterwards. He escapes again a few minutes later when he tries to get into the ring. Putski then spits in Savage's face, which isn't the nicest thing to see after a tie-up. A bit of a heel move there from Putski. And Savage decides to exit the ring for a third time to move Elizabeth away from the threat of Putski. Back in the ring, Putski shows his power and downs Savage after they come off the ropes. Putski is too powerful to then be smashed into the corner by Savage. Savage runs away again, getting an eye gouge in a few shots. Putski regains control with heavy shots of his own, which are well sold by Savage. He rams Savage's head into the ring floor, gives him some heavy uppercuts and shots in the corner, but he's chopped down by Savage, who puts his feet on the ropes in the corner to gain a 3 count with the leverage. There's far too much running away from Savage in this match, and a lack of actual wrestling moves to warrant anything higher than a 1.5 rating out of 5 from me. Woo, great start to the show, guys. Back to McMahon, Hayes and Wakekiss. They discuss the surprises so far and are interrupted by a furious Nikolai Volkov, who says he was robbed and that Americans love unfair justice. Vince replies that perhaps he sang the national anthem one too many times, and Volkov makes an unsubtle reference to the supposed 2 million people watching. Yeah, right, Volkov. Match 4, I was really excited for this one. Ricky Steamboat against Davey Boy Smith. So Ventura suggests that greed will overtake the technicality of these two tremendously athletic people. This is undermined somewhat by the opening exchanges, which sees leapfrogs, a suplex, and a pinning bridge. Davey Boy drops Steamboat with a power slam, leading to a discussion of just how close this match is, with a close call between the strength and agility of both men. Davey Boy performs another power slam but doesn't hurt the leg and therefore gets nowhere near a 3 count. Steamboat reverses Davey Boy's suplex into a great delayed suplex, followed by a splash which is then reversed by Davey Boy Smith. Davey Boy performs a series of drop kicks, the last of which sees him hit the ropes in the groin area after Steamboat moves. And after Davey has crotched himself, it's then decided that he can't continue and the match is awarded to Steamboat. Steamboat checks on him just in case the crowd decide to turn against his face character because of this, but Jesse believes Steamboat is secretly excited to win in such circumstances. This was a cruelly short match, but it was technically amazing, as you would expect, and it doesn't really get much better than this on the show, unfortunately. I've given this one 3 out of 5 stars. One of the best matches of the 15 on the show. Backstage, we've got the Junkyard Dog with Mean Gene now. The dog strangely talks up the Iron Sheik, mentioning his championship runs and his Olympic pedigree. He thanks God and then appears to thank his own dog, but maybe I misheard that. And then says, "Congratulations to the Chicago," which is followed up by an awkward silence between himself and Mean Gene, because I don't think Mean Gene understood a word that he was saying. The Chicago! Mean Gene interviews... we've already done that. It's match 5, the Iron Sheik against the Junkyard Dog. The JYD gets a grand entrance, and the ref is annoyed by his chain when he eventually makes it to the ring. Iron Sheik takes advantage of the argument, wrapping what the commentators call a sarong around the JYD. The referee doesn't care about the sarong despite his problems with the chain. The Iron Sheik has his awesome boots on again, obviously. The JYD fights back after the sarong problems with a few punches and headbutts, with the Iron Sheik dropping to the outside. Back in the ring, the JYD hits a crazy clothesline with an annoyingly large spring off the ropes, and then a delayed awkward hit to the Sheik. Later on, JYD's headbutt misses, and the Iron Sheik approaches really creepily to apply his camel clutch, but then roundly gives up on the move after the JYD himself manages to position himself in a more promising situation. The Iron Sheik pushes this annoyingly stringent referee away after punches in the corner, and this distraction allows the JYD to get one of his heavy headbutts in, and the ref kind of fast counts here because I think he's annoyed at the Iron Sheik, so that the JYD picks up the win. Basically, what a crappy referee, to be honest. Really little to enjoy here except the ambiguous refereeing. I think these two could have given this a better go if they'd had more time. 2 out of 5 here on match 5. Mean Gene's backstage with Terry Funk and Jimmy Hart. Funk really wants a challenge against the world champion, and he also wants to win the $50,000 bounty on Paul Orndorff's head, believing this will be a stepping stone to his match against Roddy Piper, who he believes will win the world title tonight. He then spits disgusting tobacco juice into the camera as Jimmy Hart babbles incoherently again. So yeah, match 6, Terry Funk against Moondog Spot. Oh my god, Moondog Spot is so bad. Funk tries to stop the match, basically saying that he can't be asked to wrestle this awful opponent. Spot actually agrees with him, but as they both leave the ring, the man from the Double Cross Ranch double crosses Spot on the entranceway with a cheap shot before trying to get back into the ring. He is stopped by Spot, who somehow catches up with him despite his lack of athletic ability, and a small fight ensues outside, but Funk accidentally allows Spot to beat the 10 count by dropping him back into the ring before the 10 count is reached. Spot wins by count out. I don't even know how long this was. It was like 30 seconds to a minute, to be honest. Terry Funk does what is described as a massacre job by the commentators, perhaps taking it a little bit too far there, Monsoon and Ventura, on Spot before chasing the ref away as well. This was a well-executed idea with the count-out to, get rid of another match. It was terribly short, terribly short though, let alone the fact that Moondog Spot went through to have another match. This gets half a star out of 5 from me. Mean Gene is with Mr. Fuji and Don Morocco. Fuji waves his cane in a threatening manner, telling Santana, "You've met your match." Mean Gene seems to take a cheeky swipe at Fuji's rhetoric by reminding him that it's actually Morocco who is wrestling. Morocco seems kind of like he's high or something, and very slow. There's an awkward silence before Morocco says he likes to face the best, and the best right now in this tournament is the Intercontinental Champion, Tito Santana. This is a very face promo for someone who is the obvious heel for this match. So we've got another kind of heel-face weird turn there. Remember Putski spitting? Yeah, that's what I mean. Match 7, Don Morocco versus the Intercontinental Champion, Tito Santana. The commentary team tried to describe this as a main event anywhere else in the world. Maybe not. And Ventura believes that Santana has made a big mistake and is greedy to risk injury in this tournament, which could see him have to give up his beloved IC title. The match starts with heavy shots by Don Morocco. Morocco misses a clothesline and Tito hits a patented crossbody. Further heavy shots by Morocco as Santana responds with the sunset flip, backslide, and later sends the big man upside down in the corner after an Irish whip. In another feat of strange strength, Tito also flips Morocco with an Irish whip reversal. Morocco gains the upper hand with a body slam drop, clotheslining Tito onto the ropes. Morocco hits several moves, including an elbow drop and a knee drop before another body slam, as he appears to get a 3 count on Tito. However, the camera intentionally fails to show Tito's foot on the ropes, who rolls up Morocco in a small package for a 3 count. It's a little bit of a heel move by Santana to gain a cheap, but it was a legitimate victory. Another role reversal there. Santana is healed for a few moments Morocco's face. After Morocco's face-like promo earlier. This was actually a decent match as well, up there with Davey Boy's match against Ricky Steamboat. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars as well. And backstage, everyone's favourite manager, Bobby Heenan, is there. Heenan announces that he's scouting for a talent as none of his men are in the tournament, with Mean Gene suggesting he's weaseled out of including his men in this tournament. Heenan calls the audience humanoids before warning Orndorff about the 50,000 bounty over his head. Match 8 then is Bob Orton against Paul Orndorff. The commentators discuss how Bob Orton is a mechanical, aka slow, wrestler, and how Orndorff must have sleepless nights about the bounty, where he can be maimed by anyone to claim the prize, and I think it's anywhere as well, so that's quite a dangerous thing, isn't it? Orndorff works Bob Orton's permanent cast with an armbar followed by an atomic drop, and smashes Orndorff's cast into the ropes as well. Orndorff continues to work on the arm with a chicken wing dropping down onto the cast. Bob Orton then reverses with a little bit of offense of his own before Orndorff performs a sunset flip in which he exposes Orton's ass. We say ass here in Britain. To complete the sunset flip. This is actually blurred out on the network, which I found quite funny. Orndorff gains the upper hand again with the frustratingly long head scissors. A little later, after this finally breaks off, Orton attempts a flying head scissors in the corner himself, but misses and is crotched in a Davey Boy Smith style, like earlier. Orndorff is taken back inside. Where are we? Orndorff begins to get pumped up with a flurry of moves before a mega punch sends Orton outside. Orton is taken back inside only to go out again, where he readjusts his cast on the apron and whams Orndorff with it as he comes over. Orton attempts to pin Orndorff, but the referee has already disqualified Orton for using the cast. So why was he allowed to have it in the first place for the match? That's what I don't understand. The two engage in little fisticuffs after the bell. This was distinctly average and a fairly slow match. But at least it was given a little bit of time. 2.5 stars out of 5 here for me. Back to McMahon, Hayes and Wakekiss. We cut back to our 3 hosts as Hayes is inappropriately touching Wakekiss. There's a recap of the first round with Wakekiss's phallic stick coming into good use again as Hayes discusses round 1. He comments on Kirshner's inexperience, how he is surprised by Dynamite, and how the Polish Macho Man, Putski, couldn't defeat the real Macho Man, Randy Savage. And how Steamboat won using his experience. He clearly hasn't watched carefully because he's probably been busy with Susan, as Steamboat won because Davey, crushed himself. The JYD and Spot wins are a surprise to Lord Alfred, and then he gives a little comment to Santana and Orndorff's victories. Vince seems to gloss over Moondog's inclusion in round 2. Perhaps because this is a network edit, I'm not sure whether there's some beef with what went on. I don't even know if anything went on. It wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, with Moondog Spot. Terry Funk comes in saying, "I was robbed," as McMahon tries to get him to turn to the camera by pulling his pants up, thus also saving us from the worst case of builder's bum I've seen in my life. Funk still believes he can win the world title and calls Alfred Hayes a big-eyed jerk. His mentions of the WWF are beeped out for some reason on the network, despite the agreement reached with the World Wildlife Fund before the network came to be. Perhaps this is an earlier edit then if you are watching on the network. Match 9 is the Dynamite Kid against Adrian Adonis, and this is the first match of round 2 / the quarterfinals. There's a 15-minute time limit to these rather than the 10-minute time limit that was earlier. An early arm drag from Dynamite sees Adonis take a hike outside. At this point, Ventura leaves the commentary booth to talk to Savage backstage because he's his mentor, leaving Monsoon on his lonesome to call this one. For a large part of this match, Adonis works on Dynamite's leg, putting Dynamite in the sharpshooter, which is called a grapevine by Monsoon, but Dynamite gets to the ropes to break up the submission. Nearing the end of the match, Hart tries to distract Dynamite as he builds momentum, as Adrian gets the chance to roll him up, but the force of the kick out knocks Adrian into his manager, Jimmy Hart, who is still on the apron. Dynamite Kid gets the 3 count for this, but Adrian has his foot on the ropes. This is kind of another heel-face ambiguity here for no reason. Hart protests the decision and Adrian has a ridiculous tantrum. Monsoon ignores the foot on the rope in his post-match analysis because he's the face commentator and he doesn't want to see looking down on the faces. I give this match 3 out of 5 stars. It was actually pretty enjoyable, and Adonis proved himself to be actually a fairly competent wrestler in this one. And of course, the Dynamite Kid is always going to be. And Mean Gene is now caught up with Jesse the Body Ventura backstage, and Jesse talks about the idea that 3 heads are better than 1, with Savage, Elizabeth, and himself coming together to make Randy Savage unstoppable. He says that he's favouring Savage, but that he's also unbiased, so figure that one out. When Mean Gene questions this contradiction, Ventura reacts angrily to him. Match 10, a WrestleMania 3 preview, as we get Randy Savage against Ricky Steamboat. Oh, yes. Oh, but wait. Oh, no, because they're going to be given absolutely no time because we've still got 5 matches to get through or something like that. Randy forces Elizabeth to the back again during his entrance and holds her in front of him as Steamboat approaches him. Savage uses this momentum to Pearl Harbor, as they said in the 80s, Steamboat as he backs away. The Dragon responds well and Savage has to drop outside again to take his attire off. After a short while, they both end up outside with the Dragon hitting knife edges and an atomic drop on the outside. Momentum changes galore back in the ring with Savage hitting Steamboat hitting a nice crossbody, but he doesn't get the 3 count without hooking the leg. Savage ends up on the apron and fetches a foreign object. They look like brass knucks, possibly, from his tights. He nails Steamboat with this during Steamboat's backdrop to try and get back in the ring, and Savage picks up the win. A girl has a massive rant at Savage on the outside, and the obvious suggestion seems to be that Ventura has helped Savage by giving him the object. This was tragically short, but obviously a technically sound match, very similar in length and scientific wrestling to the Davey Boy Steamboat match from earlier. 3 out of 5 stars from me, one of the best matches of the night. We get an interview now with our favourite wrestler of the event, Moondog Spot. Oh my god. Moondog Spot has a bone with him, and he nibbles at the bone, ruffles his hair a bit, and hits the bone on his head. And he struggles to formulate anything more than a grunt for Mean Gene, who states, "What kind of man are you?" Back to Monsoon and Gorilla, and Gorilla says that Mean Gene is discombobulated by Moondog Spot, and they discuss and obviously disagree about Savage's unfair victory over Steamboat. Match 11, Moondog Spot, he's back everyone, against the Junkyard Dog. Moondog attacks the JYD when he enters the ring and then misses the shittest splash I've ever seen off the ropes, to which Monsoon says he telegraphed that move by 14 blocks away. I don't even know what that means. JYD does a few headbutts on the floor, on all 4s of the floor, and a large one to knock Spot out, and then with no referee and without the opening bell even sounding, the JYD decides to count his own pin. And the ringside judge, whoever that is and if they even exist, gives him the win. Monsoon notes that Spotty didn't even complain about this, such as Moondog Spot's brainpower. Interesting end to this one, so it just about gets more than the half a star I was going to give it. Spot's terrible splash is worth a watch for entertainment value alone. It gets 1 star from me for the pin and the shite splash. Moondog? Oh god, if he was a commentator, oh my goodness. We're backstage again with Mean Gene and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Bobby Heenan states that you never know whether Tito Santana might be turned for Orton's bounty. He might be turned from face to heel. He says that he believes Piper can beat Hogan when questioned about this as well. Obviously, he's a heel manager. With match 12, Paul Orndorff against Tito Santana. Ventura describes Santana as a taco salesman from Tijuana. The racist 80s. And says that he can be bought by Heenan's offer. Santana has a bandaged leg from earlier competition, and Ventura smugly remarks he knew Santana could suffer in the tournament, leading to problems with maintaining his Intercontinental title. The commentators also discuss how the leg injury was unlikely to become apparent to Tito until he took a breather from his opening match. As the match progresses, Tito really begins to sell his bad leg, and Ventura is just waiting for the volcano to erupt. He thinks both faces are going to turn heel. He also believes Orndorff wants to destroy Tito's leg. Santana seems to tap during a submission toe hold, but the ref ignores this, and the hold goes on for absolutely ever. Orndorff gets slowly more aggressive, smashing Tito into the post. Both men are eventually eliminated by counter after a punching battle outside, but of fisticuffs. And Ventura believes both wrestlers showed their aggressive, true colours, whereas Monsoon believes that they just lost it for a few moments. This was a pretty dull affair for such acclaimed wrestlers, not helped by Tito having to sell this stupid leg injury. It was nice to see a bit of aggression from both the faces though, and they turned heel-like for a few seconds. 2 out of 5 stars from me, nothing really to report home about. Back to McMahon, Hayes and Wakekiss, as Hayes is continuing to grope and is now kissing Wakekiss, who actually smiles this time, an indication she's actually enjoying and consenting to this rather creepy behaviour, unlike earlier. The tournament is described as the most exciting happening in wrestling. Ugh! These guys must have been watching another event. Hayes discusses Savage's tough road to the semi-finals compared to Dynamite's easy matches. Due to the double countout in the last match, the JYD has gained a bye to the next round. And Hayes says that the wrestler's nerves must be like bare electric wires by this point. Great analogy, Lord Awkward Hayes. Monsoon and Ventura then, we cut back to them, and Ventura states that the pass for the JYD is unfair, and also pushes Monsoon, who maintains that the match beforehand was not the erupting volcano of aggression that Ventura says it is. However, he does say that it was a shame that neither man went through, and that they did lose their cool for a few moments. Monsoon describes the event as a happening again. Match 13, it's Rowdy Roddy Piper versus Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship. Piper comes out with his usual bagpipe fanfare as we cut backstage to Mean Gene, who is interviewing Hulk Hogan in his flashy white attire. Where's the Hulkamania yellow, Hogan? Boo! Hogan's head looks massive due to his lack of hair and crappy headband. And Hogan says that he's got real momentum from watching the tournament taking place, you know. He's got the pythons ready. Including another unsubtle reference to the success the WWF has had in putting the event on. Hogan believes Piper will suffer at another pay-per-view like WrestleMania 1 and shouts out to the Chi-Town Hulkamaniacs, brother. Hogan makes a characteristically homoerotic comment when he says that verbally and physically you've backed yourself into a corner, Piper, referring to Piper, and he's going to use everything to defeat him. Hogan. Hogan is helped to the ring by an orange-clad security force, which has helped others during the night to prevent the crazy fans getting to Hogan. Hulkamania is really running wild. The match starts with a championship tug of war. Notable incidences in the early going include Hogan sending Rowdy over the railing on the outside, and Hogan hitting 2 elbow drops in a row, which are somehow less powerful than his shitty leg drop. Hogan has an argument with the referee in which the referee hooks his arms to prevent further attacks of Piper in the corner, and Ventura notes that Hogan is notorious for not listening to referees in general. Hogan rips the referee's shirt as Piper applies a sleeper. Ventura believes that this is so that Hogan can get a cheap DQ victory to retain the title, and states that it's hard to fight when you're sleeping. Well done, Jesse. Ventura versus Piper, no. Hogan does the usual drooping arm routine before getting out of the situation. Before, outside, a crowd member's beer wildly misses Piper. Why would you throw it at Hogan? He's such a great guy. Right? Wildly misses Piper in a moment of hilarity. I've heard from some sources that the crowd member was seeked out by security and removed, actually, for throwing his beer at Piper. The referee is knocked out after an Irish whip reversal and an axe handled by Piper, which sends Hogan into the poor, weedy ref. Boom, the ref is down. Piper hits Hogan with a chair, but Hogan stops the second attempt and hits Piper with it himself. Hogan locks the sleeper in, still with the chair in his arms, which he unsubtly drops for the official to grab and take away. Bob Orton returns and hits Hogan with his cast, that bloody cast, and beats down on Hogan. Orndorff saves Hogan, so Orndorff's back out as well, and the match is declared a disqualification, shockingly, in a match between Hogan and Piper. Your winner and still WWF Champion, Hulk Hogan! Like the WrestleMania 1 tag match, decent entertainment here between Hogan and Piper, as you'd expect, with little technical skill on show. I was frustrated by the predictable DQ finish, but it still gets 3 out of 5 stars from me. So, Mean Gene with the JYD. The JYD speaks crazy fast about the Hogan-Piper match. He discusses how he has trained hard for 2.5 weeks himself for the tournament and has dropped from about 285 to 266. Jimmy Hart comes back and madly and incoherently tries to psych out the JYD. I don't want Jimmy Hart, why? Match 14 is the Dynamite Kid versus Randy Savage with Elizabeth. God, I wish they'd given this more time. This is the first and only semi-final due to the JYD's pass into the final. But once again, Ventura refuses to condemn Savage's treatment of Elizabeth. Savage slaps the Dynamite Kid after a speed test, and there's little wrestling in the opening as Savage performs cheap shots and dodges to the Kid, as he's done in previous matches to other people. There's a strange moment in the match where the Kid goes for a sunset flip, but Savage just sits on him to reverse it. There's a crazy head-on collision at high speed, which shows what this match could have been if they could been given more time, and Savage hadn't been required to stall so much due to his heel status. Later on, Savage goes up to the top, but is prevented from performing a top rope maneuver by a beautiful Dynamite Kid dropkick. Kid performs the best move of the whole show, a top rope superplex. But Savage reverses the pin into the smallest of small packages for the 3 count. How did Savage win after being destroyed by that awesome suplex? I don't know. The commentators have supposedly never seen a top rope suplex. Well, it is the naive 80s, isn't it? And Savage has to be carried to the back. Like so many of the matches, this could have been great with more time, but was distinctly average in its shortness. The superplex pin finish was great though. 2.5 stars out of 5 from me. Oh, Ventura and Wait Kiss, here they are again. Vince announces that it's time to give away the Silverclad 3 Rolls Royce to one of the hundreds of thousands of participants, a figure which will increase later on. Susan announces that she's never ridden one. Oh, thanks for that, Susan. You're actually allowed to speak. Vince forgets about the footage of the car, handing back to ringside before a quick U-turn, and we get to see the car in the footage at this point. And also by this point, Waitkiss can barely announce or even speak, say words, as it were. And she wishes she was in the Rolls Royce, and that's all she says. And we move on to the shittest part of the show, the Rolls Royce giveaway. So the Fink introduces Mr. Charisma again, WWF Superficial on-screen president Jack Tunney, who shows a little more interest in this segment than his earlier interview. Then we hear from Director of WWF Promotions, Mr. Basil, or Basil, as the Fink says, and also for Americans, I think they say Basil. Let me know in the comments. What suggests the announcement of the winner... Basil suggests the announcement of the winner is imminent, even though we are then introduced to another faceless suit, Ed Fibershop, who is somehow linked to the company who are giving the car away. I don't even know. He talks up the fact that the WWF has received 250,000 entries for this. Really? 80s wrestling was way too popular. And is almost hit by a soda can from the crowd because people are so annoyed by this segment. Lord Awkward Hayes is also there to introduce the winner, and he goes nuts about Chicago despite increasing boos when he asks for a welcome, and the number of responses given. He's like, oh my god, so many responses. Why don't I do that in an American accent? Oh my goodness, so many responses. He then says that the winner of the Rolls-Royce Winner Tournament is Michael Hamley of Batavia, Illinois. He mentions the days of the amphitheatre, but I can't even remember why. That's how old Hayes is. He talks about the amphitheatre, and there are boos continuing throughout this segment. Then Monsoon and Ventura discusses briefly, and Monsoon says that he might have to contact Michael Hamley about trying to get a ride in that lovely Rolls Royce. Mean Gene then interviews Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff in the locker room. Gene stresses to the cameraman to keep above the waist as the wrestlers are getting out of the shower. He tries to interview Orndorff but gets Hogan first. Hogan looks in a crazy wrong direction for ages when interviewed and annoyingly says stuff like, "Ringy ding ding!" Orndorff cuts a crazy promo about interference, and Hogan warns of a surprise later on in the year for Piper and Orton, but gets cut off before he finishes. Maybe this is a network edit, I don't know. Back to Mean Gene and Ventura, where Ventura reiterates the fact that the bounty over Orndorff can be gained by anyone if they manage to maim Orndorff. And Monsoon questions the fact that Hogan described himself and Orndorff as linked by blood, as they're not actually related. And finally, we're on to the last match of... I can't believe how many matches there were in this pay-per-view. It's your main event. Randy Savage versus the Junkyard Dog for the Wrestling Classic Tournament victory. But they say Wrestling Classic title, even though there's no title, no trophy, and no monetary reward. Savage is limping after wrestling several matches. Ventura talks up Savage again, saying that it would be unfair if he received a bye himself, even though he obviously wouldn't have a problem with it if it actually happened. Savage is in cheap hippie gear this time around. Actually, watch out for Savage's clothing in this pay-per-view, it's great. Before throwing that cheap shit away into the crowd, I think. He uses Elizabeth as a shield again and goes outside to pick up a chair for absolutely no reason. Maybe he's so tired from wrestling all these matches that he's willing to get a DQ. JYD catches the chair when it's thrown into the ring and headbutts it, and Savage receives a "You suck, Savage!" from a crowd member for good measure. JYD wins an early battle of strength, headbutts to the back of Savage, and it hits an atomic drop before applying a bear hug. Mean Gene joins the commentary team at this point, stating that the bye/luck of the draw could have happened to anyone, not just the JYD. He describes the tournament as one of the great spectaculars of all time, and creepily notes that he's watching Elizabeth. Nice one, Mean Gene. Savage hits a clunky clothesline before a massive kick out by the dog, and then Savage continues the offense, hitting a double axe handle from the top to the outside after the JYD is sent out. He also does a Pearl Harbor, knocking JYD into the post on the outside. Ventura criticizes Mean Gene's inclusion to the team, saying that the only athletics he's ever done is tying his own shoelaces. Savage hits a second of his classic axe handles from the top rope to the outside before hitting the JYD with a chair, but he doesn't get DQ'd. Maybe because the shot is so bad it doesn't warrant a DQ. He places the JYD's throat across the rail in a headlock as well outside, and another axe handle is stopped back in the ring by the JYD, just knocks a shot to prevent the third one, and JYD goes back to his headbutts. Savage then takes a backdrop to the outside really well, and doesn't make the 10 count back in. Yes, not only did the JYD get a bye in the semi-finals, he also won the tournament by count-out. Wow. He is described as the tournament champion, but receives no prize for this. An average end, but this was probably Savage's best individual performance of the night, because there was less of the running away going on, and he hit a couple of amazing axe handles. But he was really grossly misused, Savage, despite wrestling the final. This final match of the night, your main event, receives a distinctly average rating from me of 2.5 stars out of 5. Mean Gene gets to interview the JYD in the ring, probably why he came down to join the commentary team. Mean Gene speaks into a volatile microphone, and Ventura angrily interrupts, once again mentioning the JYD bye, and he wants Savage announced as the winner because he wrestled more matches. Mean Gene says that Ventura is giving the JYD a lot of heat in a rare WWF use of kind of niche wrestling slang. We go back to McMahon, Hayes, and Wakekiss in the back. Hayes describes this as his best night ever in his whole life before because he's getting close to Wakekiss. He feels as if he has won something, even if he didn't win the Rolls Royce. Wakekiss, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We come to the closing pitch credits. More successful than the spluttering and repeating WrestleMania ones, if you remember from WrestleMania 1. I noticed in the credits that it said the first annual Wrestling Classic, even though there were no more. An experiment that didn't quite work. But, they got a bit of money for it, so who cares? This section features the Hulk Hogan theme created by Jim Steinman. And that is the end for you. So, it is time to conclude. So the first thing to mention, of course, is the fact that there were 15 matches on this pay-per-view. 15 in two, like, it didn't even go on for 2.5 hours, leaving absolutely no time for any substantial or amazing wrestling matches. Savage, Steamboat, Davey Boy Smith, and the Dynamite Kid did what they could with their short matches, but they had no time to develop into anything truly out of the ordinary. They could have cut this event down to quarterfinals only, and if they were that intent on making this a big thing, they should have given Hogan and Piper the night off. This whole Rolls-Royce thing was terrible as well, and wasted way too much time. Boo, as the Chicago fans said. Match of the night is probably a tie between the frustratingly short bouts of Ricky Steamboat versus Davey Boy Smith and Randy Savage versus Steamboat. Morocco versus Tito and Dynamite Kid versus Adonis were also good. The worst matches were the awful double-cross Moondog spot with Terry Funk palaver. That was definitely the worst match. And the performer of the night goes to Randy Savage, who wrestled competently and held his face character very well throughout. Sorry, not his face, his heel character very well throughout. Despite being sent out to wrestle 4 times and ultimately losing to the JYD. Worst performer, unsurprisingly, was Moondog Spot. A shocking inclusion, and he also did a crappy Say Nothing promo. In the end, this was slightly worse than Mania 1, and when I averaged my scores, it got a 2.167 recurring average rating, rounded down to 2 stars out of 5. Oh dear, we haven't had the best start here in terms of ratings, have we, on the WrestleReview. I'll give you a quick aftermath to the Wrestling Classic. So the Wrestling Classic received around 52,000 pay-per-view buys, and there were 14,000 people in attendance at the Rosemont Horizon in suburban Chicago, Illinois. The Junkyard Dog received a push for winning the tournament, but no trophy or title as such, as I've already said. The standout performer of the night, Randy Savage, would win the Intercontinental Belt on February 8th, 1986, and the WWF title at a similar event, similar kind of tournament at WrestleMania 4, an event I hope to cover later on in the series. Ricky Steamboat would beat Savage at WrestleMania 3 for the Intercontinental Belt, and the British Bulldogs would win the tag titles at WrestleMania 2, which is coming up next, by the way. I'll mention it again in a sec. So yeah, that's it. Time for a quick outro. That's a wrap for today, guys. Thanks for listening into this edition of the WrestleReview podcast. Like and subscribe if you're tuning in from YouTube, repost and share on SoundCloud, and please send your feedback to the email address WrestleReviewFans@gmail.com. Next time we'll be looking at WrestleMania 2, probably one of my least favourite Manias, but there you go, that's the punishment I get for doing things chronologically. Thanks for listening, guys. Be sure to contact and interact in the aforementioned ways. Don't forget Twitter @ThePackham, and I'll see you for episode 3. Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye.